Turning now to politics, Speaker Mike Johnson's job on the line, and yet he is still vowing to bring critical aid bills for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan to the floor, even if he loses his job, drawing harsh rebuke from the far right.
It's surrender. It's disappointing.
I'm very disappointed. I just think the Speaker needs to get home and listen to our base.
I'm well past the point of giving grace here.
But he still is standing up to his far-right flank and drawing praise from Democrats. Take a listen.
I think it's courageous of him to say, because you have to understand that in his own caucus, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee and the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, two leaders respected on both sides of the aisle, have said that Russian propaganda has infiltrated the Republican side of the aisle.
Pelosi's praise underscores Johnson's need for Democratic support to get these critical aid bills passed. Members on both sides of the aisle say they're tired of the chaos in Congress and they're demanding things get done. Here to discuss this and more is Caroline Heldman, professor of critical theory and social justice at Occidental College. Happy Thursday, Caroline. Nice to have you with us again.
Happy Thursday, Giselle. Good to see you.
So you just heard all of the back and forth. Speaker Johnson saying he will do, though, the right thing, bringing these four separate bills to the floor, even if it costs him his speakership. Take a listen first to what he has to say.
I don't walk around thinking about the motion to vacate. It's a procedural matter here that I think has been abused in recent times. Maybe at some point we change that. But right now I got to do my job, and so do all my colleagues, and I'm confident at the end of the day, in spite of all the drama and all the palace intrigue, I think we're going to get that done.
Get it done, he says, but it's not just people like Marjorie Taylor Greene threatening to oust him. Take a listen to what Congressman Tom Massey had to say.
Because the motion is going to get called, okay? Does anybody doubt that? The motion will get called, and then he's going to lose more votes than Kevin McCarthy. And I have told him this in private, like weeks ago.
So, Caroline, what kind of chaos will ensue if we do see a deja vu of McCarthy's ouster?
Well, recall that it took 3 weeks to get Johnson into place. That's 3 weeks that the House was not engaging in any of its work or business. This is not something that they want during a presidential election. And just to be clear, they are upset that Johnson broke this into 4 bills because they will now be held accountable for specific up-down votes on specific policies when they go back, for re-election in their district. Also, they won't be able to use the leverage of, for example, something they do most support, which would be aid for Israel, and use that as leverage to not support Ukraine. They want it in one bill. So to be clear about why they're upset, it's because they'll be held accountable for these votes. Who knows what happens next? It'll throw it into chaos if he is removed, as Kevin McCarthy was. And we may see the Democrats step up if they make a deal with Johnson on Ukraine in order to save his position. But that would be the end of his political career on the Republican side.
If you were a betting woman, what would you think?
I don't think that they're going to call the vote. I think it would they did before with Kevin McCarthy. They shot themselves in the foot. It's just such bad politics for the Republican Party. I can't imagine they would do it a second time. But Giselle, they did it a first time.
Yeah, and that was unprecedented, to be sure. So as you heard Pelosi say, there are top-ranking Republicans who say Putin's pro-Russia propaganda has actually infected members of the House GOP. That's an alarming thing to say, that they're parroting the talking points of Putin. What do you make of that?
Well, it's an alarming thing to hear. I am not going to repeat the talking points because that's how conspiracy theories spread. But Russia has been running a very well-funded, well-orchestrated propaganda campaign now for a number of years to get us to think certain ways about Russia and certain ways about Ukraine. And it is disinformation. It's not based in reality, and it hides their real motives, which were exposed just a few days ago when the Washington Post got a leaked memo from the Kremlin that they're absolutely trying to use their invasion of Ukraine in order to take down the United States on the global stage. And so it is alarming to hear this same propaganda that is coming from Putin and the Kremlin being echoed not just in media interviews, but also on the floor of the House.
Yeah, by congressional members. All right. Bad day, though, for the GOP yesterday. Impeachment plans for Alejandro Mayorkas failed in the Senate. There will be no trial. But did the Republicans get their talking points and headlines they wanted for right-wing media out? Or did it backfire?
Yeah, Giselle, this was exactly what they wanted. They knew it wasn't going anywhere in the Senate. This is precisely what they wanted. They wanted to be able to say, look, we're holding Mayorkas accountable for immigration policies. This is an absolute abuse. In fact, it's the first time looking at the history record, the first time we see this kind of abuse of impeachment, meaning they're going after a sitting cabinet member. This means that now partisans on both sides will be using this tool moving forward. I think it's terrible for hyper-partisanship and stopping the business of Congress, whether it's a House or the Senate. But it's exactly what Republicans wanted. It's a very effective strategy to raise awareness about the #1 issue heading into the 2024 election, immigration.
Yeah, and while the Mayorkas impeachment failed, the attempt to impeach President Biden does continue despite no evidence. Take a listen to Democrats like Jamie Raskin, who've had enough of this theater and got really heated.
No, you have not identified a single crime. Well, what is the crime that you want to impeach Joe Biden for and keep this nonsense going? Why? What is the crime? Tell America right now.
You're about to find out.
What is the crime?
You're about to find out.
Name
very
it.
soon.
About to find out soon, but that promise has gone unfulfilled as yet. But what do the polls say, Caroline, about this issue? Are voters buying it?
Voters are actually not tuning in much to the Biden impeachment. And we know that it was really halted a month ago when it was found that their prime witness was a Russian operative. You notice how often Russia is coming up in our conversation today. This is grandstanding. This is politicking, right? They don't have a case, and they're trying to keep the Biden impeachment, I would say, a faux kind of action here, a waste of a lot of taxpayer dollars and time in order to say, look, well, Donald Trump was impeached. Biden was also impeached. This is electioneering during a presidential campaign year.
Electioneering. Okay. All right. Let's turn to the heated abortion debate. Democrats in Arizona failed to repeal the 1864 Civil War abortion ban. Even Trump says it should be repealed. How do Republicans deal with this major divide on this critical issue leading into November in their party?
Well, these cases like the one in Arizona makes the Republican Party or reminds voters that their position is extreme, right? The overturn of Roe. And as you noted, Donald Trump quickly did a dance where he said, look, it should stay with the states. And then he immediately said, wait, but not Arizona. I don't like what's happening there. I mean, this is a bill. It's fun to go back in history, right? This is a bill written by a man who had, multiple wives. The age of consent was 10 years old at the time. He had a 12-year-old wife. He had a 14-year-old wife. I mean, it really just takes you back, and it looks terrible for Arizona. And so Republicans are facing this uphill battle. It doesn't matter which state. A majority of Americans support the reinstatement of Roe. And so they're having to do a very delicate dance here because this is a losing proposition. Abortion is a losing proposition for Republicans when it's on the ballot.
I do want to ask you about former Attorney General Bill Barr. Despite being so critical of Trump and the big lie, he says he's still going to endorse Trump for president because he feels a second Biden term will just be disastrous for the country. What do you make of that?
Maybe he's looking for a job, Giselle. I don't know. In his defense, he's always said it's two bad choices, so I'm just going to vote my party line. I'm a little surprised because of the violent insurrection. I would imagine an attorney general would be more upset about that than anything that's happened in his lifetime for the presidency. But it appears that his party affiliation with Republicans is overriding that concern.
Right. All right. Trump's hush money trial resumes in New York today. It's day 3 of jury selection. 7 already chosen, 1 dismissed after aspects of her identity were made public. This is all moving so much quicker than expected and appearing to anger the former president, who once again violated the gag order last night on Truth Social. This is what he wrote, attacking the jury, calling them liberal activists, lying to the judge to get on the jury. What does Judge Mershon do?
Well, I think he should be very reluctant to put him in jail. He could technically, but I'm assuming he's going to fine him as the judge in the civil trial did. Remember, he got $15,000 in fines for multiple violations of the gag order. But I just think he's in a tight position here. You cannot put, forget former president. He's a presidential candidate. You can't put that man in jail. I mean, that would just have an effect on the election. And I think Trump knows that, which is why I think we'll see lots of violations of the gag order in this trial.
Yeah, he keeps pushing the envelope. All right, in the New York civil fraud case, Trump's $175 million bond does not seem to meet New York standards. So now what happens? Again, is there accountability there?
Well, there has to be at some point. So the $175 million bond, apparently the company's not registered in New York and maybe doesn't have the funds to cover it. So the judge in that civil trial will determine whether the bond meets the requirements. If it doesn't, two things could happen. One, he has to get another bond, or the second is Letitia James starts seizing his assets. So we could see that happen.
All right, his money troubles also continue. His media company stock continues to go tanking 70%. And now he's demanding a 5% cut from GOP candidates who use him in their ads. Is this desperation or a really savvy new fundraising tactic?
I think it's a savvy new fundraising tactic. We've never seen this before. I mean, Trump is essentially having down ballot Republican candidates pay to use his brand. And in fact, there's some language in there, too, that said, hey, if you want to go above the 5%, you'd make the RNC and Trump really happy. So basically, candidates can now try to buy favor with Donald Trump by kicking up money to him when they use his name or his likeness in an ad. It's impressive.
It's savvy. All right, before I let you go, more than 15 members of the Kennedy family come together to endorse Biden. RFK Jr. polling at around 10%. The Biden campaign clearly sees him as a threat. How significant that the Kennedy family is making this huge public endorsement?
I think it's very significant. We saw a lot of them show up over Easter. Now they're making a formal announcement. They're doing it, 7 months before the election, which speaks to the gravity of the situation for Biden. And if you look at polls, Kennedy is pulling from Biden, especially with young voters on both Gaza and the environment. And in key swing states, he could be the difference between Biden winning the election and losing the election. So he's very aware of that. He's also pulling some Trump voters, but it's definitely more pulling from Biden.
As we always say, never a dull moment, right?
7 more
Caroline,
months.
that's right, unprecedented. We use that word more. I bet you that's the most word, search right now on Google. All right, Caroline Heldman, professor of critical theory at social justice at Occidental College, as always. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Giselle.